In section 16.3, we are going to use measures of center to make comparison statements between two sets of data. Measures of center, again, are the mean and median. You may remember hearing the word mode. Mode is the most common number that shows up in a set of data. That doesn't necessarily mean it's in the center, so that's why we don't call it a measure of center, even though it's common to say mean, median, and mode. So let's take a look here in class M and class R. We have the same number of students because there are the same number of dots in each set of data. And the mode is the same. They both have the same number of doodles that are most common, which is 5. But if we figure out the mean, which again is adding up all the numbers and dividing by how many numbers we have, the means are different. So we're going to take a look at measures of center and make comparison statements. So in number 1 here, it says the following box plots display how fast two different animals can run. Compare the median of each box plot. So if you recall what box plots are made of, the left-hand dot is the minimum, then it goes Q1, then the third dot is the median, the fourth one is Q3, and the fifth one is the max. So if we're going to compare the medians, we're going to look to see where the middle dot ends up on my line. So that is 38.4. So the median speed of animal 1 is 38.4 miles per hour. If we take a look at animal 2, we have a median that occurs right here, and that is 40.6. So the median speed of animal 2 is 40.6 miles per hour. And again, my dogs like to play when I make these videos, so you're going to hear them playing in the background. So now it's time to make a comparison statement between the two animals using their medians. So I'm going to say that animal 2, right here, is the speed of animal 2 is 2.4 miles per hour faster than animal 1. That's my comparison statement. Alright, let's move on to number 2. Number 2 says that water boils at different temperatures based on its elevation above sea level. Rob and Ann are in different cities. They both boil water in a number of pots. Each person records the water temperature just as the water starts to boil. The higher the elevation is, the lower the boiling point is. And the lower the elevation is, the higher the boiling point is. They use box plots to display their data. Compare the medians of the box plots. What inference can you make based on the median values? So, let's first take a look at the median values. Rob's is right here. So we're going to say that's about 96.9 degrees Celsius. And then we'll take a look at Ann's. Ann's median temperature is right there. And we're going to say that that's about 49.9 degrees Celsius. I'm sorry, 94.9 degrees Celsius. So what is an inference based on the given information? So if we go back up here and take a look at the statement, the higher the elevation is, the lower the boiling point. And the lower the elevation is, the higher the boiling point. So I'm going to say that since Ann's water boils at a lower median temperature, Ann is at a higher elevation than Rob. That is my inference. So again, my inference is that since Ann's water boils at a lower median temperature, Ann is at a higher elevation than Rob. Alright, moving on to number 3. Number 3 is going to require a calculator, so please pause the video and grab a calculator if you need to. And I highly recommend that you actually do the math as well as watch the video so that you can do it on your own when it's time. So number 3 says an experiment compares the lifespan of 2 brands of light bulbs. 12 bulbs of each type were tested until failure. The results are shown for the 2 types of light bulbs in hours. Find the mean time of each light bulb and compare the means of each population. So remember, to find the mean, we add up all the data points and then divide by however many data points there are. So this is where I would like for you to pause the video and find the mean of bulb A and the mean of bulb B. And I highly recommend that you write down how you got the mean. So pause the video and find the mean for each one. If you read the directions, it says to round each answer to the nearest hundredth. So you can see that I got a sum for bulb A of 14,498. There are 12 numbers there, so you divide that by 12. And if you round, you get 1,208.17 hours. For bulb B, you can see my calculations there. I got a mean time of 1,239.25 hours. Notice that I'm putting labels with my answers because it's important for you to know what you just found. We are now asked to write a comparison statement. So you can see that the mean time for bright bulb, okay, and I'm looking up here to get that name, bulb B is called bright bulb, is a longer lifespan than the hot lights. So my comparison statement is that bright bulb brand lights last an average of 31.08 hours longer than hot light bulbs. Again, bright bulb brand lights last an average of 31.08 hours longer than hot light bulbs. Alright, let's move on to number 4. It says the following dot plots show the amount of time it takes each person in a random sample to complete 2 similar problems. What is the mean time for each problem? Make a comparison inference based on the mean values. So to find the mean, we add up all the numbers and then divide by however many numbers there are. Now on this one, I'm going to actually show you the fastest way to type it in as long as you're using a scientific calculator. So you see how we have 2 25s. So instead of typing in 25 plus 25, I'm going to type in 25 times 2 plus 26 times 2 plus 27 times 3 plus 28 times 2 plus 31. So that will probably save you a little bit of time if you type it in that way. Especially when you come over to problem 2, you would just type in 23 times 4 plus 24 times 4 plus 26 times 2 instead of adding up 10 separate numbers. So please go ahead and pause the video now, calculate the means, and then compare your answers to mine. Pause the video now, please. So I got a mean time for problem 1 to be 27 minutes and the mean time for problem 2 to be 24 minutes. And now it's time to make an inference. So I'm going to say that since problem 2 took less time on average than problem 1, that probably means that problem 2 was an easier problem to solve. So again, my inference is that since problem 2 took less time on average than, that's a typo, let me fix that, then problem 1, problem 2 was easier. Okay, there we go. Alright, moving on to number 5. A study is done to compare the fuel efficiency of cars. The first group of cars generally get about 39 miles per gallon, and the second group of cars generally get about 39 miles per gallon. Based on the mean values of each group, what inference can be made? What else might a person conclude from the mean values? So you have to know a little bit about cars and what miles per gallon means in order to make an educated guess or inference about what's happening here. But you can see that both sets of cars get about the same miles per gallon, or we call that fuel efficiency, as each other do. So my first inference is that both groups of cars are going to be in the same class of cars, which means you're not comparing an SUV to a sports car. You're probably comparing, and this is a really, really good fuel efficiency, so I'm going to say that my inference is both groups of cars are hybrids, which means you combine electric and gas together to make the car run. Now, my second inference goes back to the fact that they have the same fuel efficiency. So my second inference is that it will cost approximately the same amount of money to pay for gas for both groups of cars. Okay, so once you get that written down, again, those are inferences, so you could have come up with different inferences, and if you came up with different inferences and you want to check with me, please do so to make sure that you're on the right path. The next part of our notes, these are just notes down here. This is not an example, but these are very, very important for you to understand. If you have different comparative inferences based on each measure of center, you can draw a conclusion about the situation by looking more closely at the data sets. So if the means and the medians are very different, you would have different comparative inferences. What you want to look at is the data set. Do you see how in this second set of data set you have this number that doesn't match the others? We call that a stray data value. And when we have numbers that are also called outliers, we want to use the median value to make comparisons, because that outlier or that stray data value really changes the mean value. But if you look at the first set of data, all of these data points are pretty close together, so that's when we would typically use the mean. So this is a very important concept that you need to make sure that you take note of. When there are no stray data values, we want to use the mean, and when there are stray data values, we want to use the median when we're comparing measures of center. All right, let's take a look at the next page. A family is looking for a new home, and the family is comparing homes in two towns. The median home price of town 1 is $350,000. In town 2, the median home price is $417,484. Based on the median home prices of each town, what inference can be made and what else might a person conclude from the median values? So, the inference 1 is that the cost of living, so how much it costs to just pay for normal things, is higher in town 2 than it would be in town 1. For example, if you're comparing prices of homes in Dublin or Worthington, Ohio compared to a city in Los Angeles, you're going to have to pay a lot more for the house in Los Angeles. So that's what I'm talking about as far as cost of living. A second inference is if you're comparing towns that are close to each other but within the same cost of living, you would probably assume that since town 2 has a much higher median home price, then you could probably say that town 2 has bigger houses in general than in town 1. So, for example, a 5-bedroom house compared to a 3-bedroom house. So the size of house might be bigger in general in town 2. Okay, let's move on to the next one. And again, when we make inferences, there's no one particular right answer. So if you have different ones, please ask me. Number 7. A group is comparing the number of people that go to 2 different chain stores. The mean number of people that go to store 1 each day is 844, and the mean number of people that go to store 2 each day is 956. What inference can be made based on the mean values? What else might a person conclude? And write a different conclusion based on the mean values. So basically they're just asking for 3 different inferences you can make because store 2 has more people going to it than store 1 each day. So the ones that I came up with are that store 2 has better prices than store 1. Store 2 is closer to more people than store 1. And store 2 has a better selection of items than store 1. Those could all be reasons why store 2 gets more people per day than store 1. Okay, you may need to pause in order to get all that written down. And we are now on number 8. And this is the last one we're going to have in our notes here. So number 8. There are 2 types of plants in a greenhouse. The following dot plots show the heights of 20 plants, 10 of type 1 and 10 of type 2. The plants are given the same amount of food and water. What is the mean height for each type of plant? Make a comparative inference based on the mean values. Explain why you would want to use a dot plot to find the mean instead of a box plot. Alright, so the first thing we're asked to do is find the mean. I ask that you pause the video, do the calculations yourself, then resume the video and compare your answers to mine. Pause the video now and find the means of each type. So as you can see, I got a mean height of plant 1 of 48 centimeters, and the mean height for plant 2 is 53 centimeters. So now I'm going to make an inference, and it's important to note that here it says that they are given the same amount of food and water. So I'm not going to say that one was treated better than the other. I am going to say that the plants of type 2 generally grow taller than that of plant type 1. So for example, I'm going to use an extreme example, but if you talk about sunflowers compared to pansies, pansies grow very short and sunflowers grow very tall. Now obviously that's not the case here, but the point I'm trying to make is that different types of plants have a different height depending on the plant it is. Okay. Now, the explanation of why you would want to use a dot plot instead of a box plot to find the mean. Well, if you have a box plot, you cannot find the mean. It's impossible because a box plot only gives those 5 values, the min, Q1, median, Q3, and max. A dot plot that we have here gives the individual values that we can add up and then divide by how many we have. So we want to use a dot plot to find the mean because it gives all the values in the data. A box plot does not give individual data points. Okay, so the explanation again is that I want to use a dot plot to find the mean since it gives me the individual data points. I cannot find the mean in a box plot since I do not know each individual data point. That concludes the lesson for section 16.3. There is no Google form to fill out. We did a lot of examples, and it is not an easy task to come up with inferences that are valid based on this information. So hopefully with all of these examples, you've gotten a very good idea of what is expected.